Welcome back to another episode of Syracuse Sports. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Okay, I'll stop singing now. But thank you for heading on back here to this podcast. Do you subscribe? All the cool kids are doing it. Apple, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button so you can hear my bad singing on demand whenever you want. Got a fun show lined up for you today. My friend David Hale from ESPN, college football writer extraordinaire, is going to join us here. Now, David has a primary focus on the ACC, but certainly broadens the scope on the entire landscape of college football. He writes a terrific column that comes out Sunday mornings that kind of goes over the whole day in college football with his unique commentary and humor in that. Does an amazing job covering the ACC. He's got a great show on the ACC network along with Andrea Adelson, and he's just an all-around good American. My guy, David Hale, who today we covered Bill Belichick in North Carolina. How's that going down there? What's up with Clemson? What's the panic level right there? Huge matchup with Georgia Tech coming. Swing game in the ACC, depending on when you're listening and watching here. Syracuse has Clemson after they play Colgate. So what kind of Clemson Tigers team is Syracuse going to face? Next week, we talked to David about all of that. Certainly his thoughts on Fran Brown and Syracuse in the current moment and why he had to spend 24 hours in a Buc-ees. Fascinating story there. Looking forward to that conversation. Couple reminders for you, though, before we get into our conversation with David Hale. One, being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you direct text message access to me anytime, my friends. Your thoughts, your opinions, your questions and comments, the questions you want us to ask Syracuse players and coaches. Just want to shoot the breeze, talk SU sports. That's what being a Syracuse Sports Insider is all about. It gives you direct text message access to me and exclusive voice on our Syracuse football postgame shows. Oh, yeah, that's another reminder. Our Syracuse football postgame shows that we're doing after every Syracuse football game on YouTube, on Facebook, on X. If you subscribe to the pod, you'll get that too, so you can listen and watch on demand when you want. But join us live after Syracuse football games for our Syracuse football postgame show presented by Krause Health, and our insiders get their voice exclusively heard on this podcast and those post-game shows. And our third reminder is that we love to feature your original music here on the pod. And we've got another song today from Keira Shea. We featured previously on the pod, we're getting great feedback on all of our artists, frankly, that we're featuring here. And you guys are loving the original music. And we love to feature it here on the podcast as well. So please, if you're an original artist, if you're in a band and you want your independent original music featured here on Syracuse Sports, please get in touch. We'd love to help you out. All the info is in the show notes on how you can do that. Keira Shea is back. We featured a previous song of hers called Barefoot, which was terrific. This one's going to hit you in the feels, guys. I'm not going to lie. It's called 6 Feet Deep. It's a tremendous song from Keira, and you can get all her information and where to download her music in the show notes. So let's listen to a bit of 6 Feet Deep now, and then we're going to feature the song in its entirety at the end of the podcast. So a little bit of that, and then my guy David Hale from ESPN talking college football.
Missing all my life, and I made some mistakes, but hell, I'm turning out alright. And it's no thanks to you, it was all on him. He made the woman out of the kid. And yeah, I hate it when someone asks me where my mama is. I'd say, don't feel bad, it ain't too crazy. My mama died when I was a baby, and they believe it, 'cause it's easier than telling them that my mama ran off to be a kid, left her own at home with a half a kiss saying, don't you worry, darling, I'll be home soon. So I held on tight to my daddy's love. He said I'm not leaving till I'm in the mud, laying 6 feet deep in the nicest dirt around.
This man right here recently spent 24 hours in a Buc-ees, and what an experience it was. So I would seek out the video of that, seek out the social media clips from that. It was an incredible experience, and he also once upon a time ranked all of Tom Petty's albums and did not include Wildflowers, and I will
Yeah,
not
well, it
let him
goes to
forget
show
it.
that I'm not that bright is the problem.
I
Or
think,
I get distracted easily.
or you were having a couple of beers, grilling out one night and just forgot to
It's
put
all of the
Wildflowers
above.
on this list. Exactly. How are you, David? Good to see you, man.
I'm good. And for reference, I think I'd probably have Wildflowers 1, although Damn the Torpedoes is really good. And uh, yeah, I'd probably have Wildflowers 1 in retrospect.
Wildflowers is definitely one. My 2 is Into the Great Wide Open because that's just in my wheelhouse. Like that's when I really got into Petty, and then I kind of backtrack after that. But
Full Moon Fever also exceptional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Now
there's no wrong answers here. I want
there are no wrong answers.
Club,
exactly. Yeah. We're going to turn it into a petty pod again. We apologize to the people. They're here for college football, and of course I want to start with your thoughts on. I know we're early in the season and Syracuse hasn't really dug in on the ACC slate. They will next week with Clemson awaiting here. But one thing I am struck by with Fran Brown, David, and it seems to be kind of seeping out there when you're getting talked about on Pardon My Take and Pat McAfee and David Hale and Andrea Adelson on the ACC show. Fran Brown is really good at going viral. Whether he intends to or not, he's good at this. So this week he makes the team run the sprints and the whole thing, and everybody on a football Monday after the first NFL weekend, even if it's just for 2 minutes, is talking about Syracuse football. He's good at this game.
Yeah, and I don't get any sense that is intentional on his part. I think that what makes him go viral, what makes people so interested in him is that he is uniquely him. Yes. He is not following the rules of how you are supposed to act as a college football coach, the things you're supposed to say as a college football coach, how you're supposed to treat your team in 2025 in an era of revenue sharing and NIL. Like he is just uniquely him and does not apologize for a second of it. And you like it or you don't, but it grabs your attention. And if you're Syracuse, to me, that's great. It is, again, we live in an attention economy. I don't think that's what he's trying to create here in any way whatsoever, but getting attention for Syracuse. And look, I think aside from Dion and maybe Belichick, there is not a coach in the country, the average player, the average 17, 16, 18-year-old player in high school is more interested in learning about what is it like to play for this guy than Fran Brown. And I mean, again, like you can talk about how that's necessary at a place like Syracuse, but frankly, that is of value to any school in the country because there's, to get the attention of a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old football recruit is hard to do these days, to stand out in a crowd. And Fran Brown does it, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that even this old guy has to recognize is, when people are criticizing it, even if they're just kind of, having fun with it on some of these shows that were out there this week, it's like, well, who does see it? 16-year-old recruits.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing. And like I said, even in this case, Dan Villari told us in the postgame after that win over UConn, like Fran said it during the week, like if you don't play up to my standard, you're going to run. I don't think they meant like right after the game, but and this day and age, David, there are a few places you can hide where there's not a camera phone around. Yeah. So like it's a bonus of what he's trying to do and implement in the team. I agree with you there. So Clemson is looming for Syracuse once they get past Colgate this week. No offense to mighty Colgate here. Clemson's got a big game first, though. They got Georgia Tech this week. And Haynes King, from all indications, we think is going to play. You and I are speaking in the middle of the week, so we'll see how that progresses, but it kind of feels like he's going to be out there. Clemson, though, David, what's the panic meter right now? They're not looking like we thought Clemson would look, particularly on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I was not a buyer on Clemson the way that everybody else was a buyer. I mean, I was sort of a buyer in the way that like you invest in IBM and expect like you'll get a steady return on it. Like I did not think this was going to be a stock that was about to skyrocket just because I watched Clemson last year. Like people kind of think like, oh, look at the stats and I recognize all these names, which recognizing the names on a roster is unique in this day and age of college football. But they got blown out by Louisville, despite what the final score was. They got blown out by Texas. They got blown out by Georgia. They nearly could have lost to Pitt last year. They should have probably lost to SMU last year in the ACC championship game. Like, this was not a team that dominated all comers down the stretch. Like, this was a team that probably should have lost its last 3 games. So I had my doubts in general. They have struggled to really identify a philosophy or who they are, an identity on offense, and to me, that's the biggest problem. Like, the opener against LSU was a 1-possession game, and in fact, a 1-possession game that Clemson led for a decent portion of the second half, and they ran the ball 4 times in the second half. 4 times.
Wow.
Including the last 19 plays of that game were all pass plays. Like, that is a team that just doesn't know who it wants to be. They're playing without Antonio Williams, who is their best receiver. The young receivers have talent, but they really are not getting the job done consistently. About fighting for those 50-50 balls have really been more like 10-90 balls for them. Again, Adam Randall had a nice game against Troy in the second half, but he is a converted wide receiver. It's Troy. Your offensive line has gotten pushed around a good bit. Like, I just look at all of this and I say, like, they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. They have done nothing to show me that they are a team that is capable of winning a national championship. Should they still be the favorite to win the ACC? Probably. I think you make a very good case for Miami. I think you could probably make a case for Florida State at this point, though I'm still a little more trepidatious on that. And frankly, the team that I think you might be able to make a very good case for is the one they're playing this week, because I think Georgia Tech is really good.
I picked Georgia Tech to make that ACC championship game, I believe, with Clemson. I think I bought into the hype at the beginning of the year. I just love what Brent Key is doing there, how he's building this team. Haynes has to be healthy for this thing to function the way it needs to. But, man, Georgia Tech just has that look. And, you look at Syracuse's schedule and people talk about going to Clemson and going to Miami and going to South Bend and all these games. Don't leave out at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
It's a big game.
It's funny, too, because you talk about Fran Brown and the impact that he's made. I'm not sure that there is a team in the country that is more reflective of the personality and style of its head coach as Georgia Tech is. That is a team that wants to get down in the gutter. The dirtier, the more physical, the more unpleasant the atmosphere is, the happier they are to be there. And boy, oh boy, that makes a lot of folks uncomfortable. And I think, again, Haynes King is the perfect example of that. But look, we saw their backup quarterback, Aaron Philo, a good bit last year. And then he had, after the first 3 drives for Georgia Tech each of the last couple of weeks, just wipe those out. They should have punted on first down. But after that, Philo was really, really good against an FCS team. I know, talking to Brent Key, I think Haynes King is the straw that stirs the drink for them. But Aaron Philo is a guy they fully believe they can win with, too. They've got a good backfield. That offensive line is just grinders. They're defensively, they're probably a little more of a work in progress. They are certainly nowhere near as talented on the defensive side of the ball as Clemson is, but they like to play that style. I've seen I know TJ Parker and Peter Woods and DeMonte Capehart. They're all these guys with NFL pedigree. But I watched them roll over against South Carolina and Lenora Sellers last year. I've watched them not want it very much too often. Georgia Tech, they always want it.
David, you touched on it a minute ago. I am still, in this day and age, with the resources that certain programs have, that they can look as bad from start to finish, and just what could go wrong did for Florida State last year. Still, I'm just blown away that can happen. But it did. And that's the beauty of sports. Yeah. It should never happen, exactly. But that is the beauty of college football as well. It's very early here, but it does seem like they have bounced back. It does seem like they're going to be a functioning football team that's not going to fall deep in a well this year, which is a bonus, right? But what are you buying? What are you not buying on Florida State right now? Yeah.
I'm still a little skeptical. I mean, Tommy Castellanos has had to complete 16 passes so far this year. Somebody eventually is going to take their run game away and force them to do a thing that they're not as comfortable doing. And how will they respond to that? The defense is, I think, good. It's probably less talented by NFL talent standards than it was last year. And eventually they're going to run up against somebody who can really shove them around a little bit at the line of scrimmage. I don't know how many teams in the ACC are going to be those somebodies, though. And the single biggest takeaway I have for Florida State, because you talk about 2-10 and how the hell does that happen? And it's, it's like in Endgame where Benedict Cumberbatch is like going through all the scenarios. Like
Right.
There's 1 in a trillion that it works out 2-10 at Florida State. But the way that it happened, among many other things, was a team that just was soft as hell and did not believe in itself. And the first time they hit adversity, just rolled over like a dog, waiting to scratch its belly. So there was a play in the opener against Alabama where Florida State was leading, but the tide had really turned, and Alabama was moving the football, and they were about to force a 3-and-out in the fourth quarter. Florida State was facing a 4th and a long 1 at its own 34, up 7. And Alabama, I hate the term momentum, but if there's such a thing exists, Alabama had it. And Mike Norvell, knowing everything that they had been through last year, says, we're going for it. And that's a stupid decision for a coach that's protecting a lead and really just needs to not get fired this year. But he went the other way, and he said, we're rolling the dice, and they got it. And they got it pretty handily by just going straight up the middle power football with Tommy Castellanos. And I thought, man, if there is ever a moment in which you've exercised the demons of 2024, that is it. To me, it's perhaps the most important play that has happened, certainly in the ACC so far this year. So, look, what's the ceiling for Florida State? I'm still a little skeptical that we're talking about a 10 or 11 win team this year. I don't know. But I know they're not going to look like they did last year because of that one play tells me this team has a completely different personality.
David, we're about 12 minutes into ACC content, and we have not said the name Bill Belichick yet, so how dare us?
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
That's a demerit on our part. But, yeah, I mean, look, I was highly skeptical this thing's going to work. He is free to prove me wrong. But what's the feeling there? Have you talked to people there? Like, is this going to work? I'll just put it that way. I mean, I'd be very surprised this thing is going to work the way that maybe they envisioned it for $10 million a year.
And here's the thing: we talked about with Dion and Fran Brown off the top, that there's a level of curiosity about what it's like to play for Bill Belichick. That curiosity soon dissipates, I think, when you talk to Bill Belichick, right? Like, they're not doing anything to capitalize on the attention that they have. In fact, they don't want the attention. So that's problematic. They're literally keeping NFL scouts away from practice.
Can't do that.
How is that a recruiting pitch?
Exactly.
Like, your whole goal is to get guys in the NFL. I look at this, people made way too much, and I said this all offseason, way too much of his girlfriend, who is, to me, not a problem. That's somebody who understands the attention economy. Like, that was actually a good thing, I think. You look at the staff that he has surrounded himself with, and to me, I'm not going to say they're a bunch of gold diggers, but there's a feel of that there, right? It's 2 of his kids. It's Mike Lombardi, his former podcast host, and his kid. It's some guys who used to play for him. It's people who have the same agent as him. It's this little insular community that they've created, and not a lot of experience in there. I know folks up around Syracuse will be familiar with the name Bob Diaco. If he's on your staff, to me, you've got some problems. So, look, I mean, it wasn't just that they got beat down in the opener against TCU. It's that team didn't look like they knew how to play football. I mean, that was brutal after the first drive on both sides of the ball. And then they go to Charlotte, and Charlotte's a team that got run out of the building by, I think, a mediocre App State the week before that also looked like it didn't much know how to play football. And Charlotte more or less hung with them. A 20-7 or 20-3 game or whatever it was at Charlotte, like against a team that is in full-on rebuild there, and not great. They scored 3 points in the second half against Charlotte. Like, that ain't great. I know it's a win, but I would not be surprised at all if they lose to Richmond this week. And you're just at such a risk of losing the one thing you were guaranteed, which is enthusiasm. There was enthusiasm about this, and once that's out the door, man, I don't know. And so much of this feels to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're a New Englander up there, more or less. It feels like this is just Bill Belichick's grudge match, like him spiting people by coaching still. And he's mad about New England, and he's mad at the Kraft family,
100%.
He's mad at the media, and he's mad at whoever else. Like, what's the goal here?
That's usually how political campaigns are run, not college football. And
Right. Yeah.
this whole thing just has a Steve Buscemi, although I believe he prefers Buscemi, but that's a whole different
No,
conversation.
it'll always be Buscemi to me.
But it has a Buscemi, hello, fellow kids feel to it. Hello, fellow kids. I'd like to come in and coach college football. Lombardi is the GM, but being a GM in college football is nowhere near what he thinks a general manager is. And people are going to raise their eyebrows at this comparison, David. But I am going to compare this to he who shall not be named in Syracuse, a certain coach in the mid-2000s. Because when Greg Robinson came in here, he hired a bunch of people that did not know how to recruit, that did not know how to connect with high school coaches. He was a pro guy who came in and tried to run it like a pro team, and it all fell in on itself, right? And I just get the sense that Belichick is in those ways. Like, I know football, we'll make it work. We want to be the 33rd team, right? This whole thing, it's like, well, even with NIL and the transfer portal and the world we live in today, there is still an element of college football here that you have to understand, and I'm not getting the vibe that they do.
And look, here's the thing. I still fully believe Bill Belichick is a very good football coach who sees things that nobody else. Like, I've heard too many stories about what's happened in Chapel Hill, just people sitting down with him and the way that he handles his staff, his players, the stuff that he sees on film, how prepared he individually is. But we're not, to your point, we're not talking about guys in their fifth year in the NFL that you're teaching that to. These are guys who it's over their head in some cases. These are guys who are not NFL talented in some cases. And one of the things Teddy Bruschi told me is it is integral at this level that the people who are sort of the interpreters between Bill and the players, the staff in between, has to be really good at their job too, because Bill is great at what he does. But getting all of that information in the time restrictions that you have in college to the players to a level that they can understand and execute it is a different story. And again, I go back to who has he surrounded himself with? He's surrounded himself with loyalists and people who think they can get something from him, as opposed to people who are looking at, this is what he does well, and here's how I can make it better.
USF Miami, to switch to that, David, has become a big game all of a sudden with South Florida's resurgence back in the poll for the first time in 7 years. That was an interesting discussion on social media this week. I was an AP voter once upon a time, and I accidentally, it was a true mistake. It was a copy and paste error, left Baylor out of my poll once, and it was the worst week of my life. So I feel for that young lady out there, but Miami, with Carson Beck and we're kind of trying to figure out who's going to win this league, and I've looked at them with a skeptical eye, but I don't know. Maybe they got something there in Miami. What are you seeing with the Canes right now?
Yeah, look, the first game I had two big takeaways against Notre Dame. The one was that looks like an SEC team out on the field, and I mean they're just big, physical, talented, fast. Like all the things that when you are building a national championship team, they looked the part and often played the part. And my other takeaway was the latter half of that fourth quarter, or really much of the second half, felt like a typical Mario Cristobal's about to blow a game with his game day coaching routine. They went into a shell and allowed Notre Dame back into that game. And if it was even close to last year's defense, I think they would have lost that game. But because I think Cordy Heatherman is an exceptionally good defensive coordinator, and they had a really good scheme, and those two defensive ends that they have just are nasty as hell, that they just got after one of the best offensive lines in college football and got after CJ Carr and managed to win that game almost in spite of how they played. I think when you are, especially if you're a team that looks the part of a high-level SEC team and you're playing in the ACC, your goal ought to be foot on the neck and don't let up, not playing conservatively at any point. And so I was kind of frustrated with how the game played out, but I came away saying, like, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, Miami, I think, is very, very good.
Broad question for you here. I've been asking some people that cover college football this, and I want to get your take on it. And I kind of noted it a minute ago with Belichick. With NIL, with the portal, with all the money coming in, conference realignment, which, we should probably touch on that before we go to. But it still feels like college football to me. And that's been my point all along, that even with all this stuff that surrounds the game, on Saturday, it will always feel like college football. Like, I don't think they can infiltrate that. Maybe I'll be wrong, but there's just certain things about college football. I was talking to somebody the other day. There's no ego, as a matter of fact, and he was having a conversation with his color guy, Daniel Jeremiah. He does the Chargers preseason games, and Jeremiah made a great point. He's like, San Francisco 49ers fans are not going to rush the field if we beat anybody, right? That still happens in college football, and the tailgates and the atmosphere and the rivalries, and that is still there. I could be wrong on this, but how do you see it now in 2025 with everything that surrounds the game? Does it still feel like college football to you?
I'll give you one specific moment to me that the NFL will never have. A 60-some-year-old dude joins the band at LSU, is playing for that. Like, that's freaking awesome. And there's so much stuff like that happens over the course of any college football season. And you're right. Like, look, there's great. I'm an Eagles fan. I've been to plenty of great Eagles tailgates that I don't remember well. But it ain't the same as going back to the college you went to and going back to the bars that you used to go to 20 years ago before a football game. I do worry that we keep chipping away at a bit of the fundamental element. Like, I always go back to the Jerry Seinfeld joke that sports is basically rooting for laundry because the players are always changing. You're just rooting for the jersey. And there is a lot of that now. But at the same time, like, the experience itself, Saturdays, to me, a Saturday today has been every bit as great as the Saturday 10 years ago or 20 years before that.
I agree.
Now, what happens the other 350-ish days out of the year? It is hard to be a college football fan during those times. I will give you that. But Saturdays are still every bit as awesome as they've always been.
I mentioned we should probably touch on conference realignment here. As we stand here, where's the conference realignment O-meter here in the ACC? Did they kick the can down the road here with some recent developments? It feels like it's always kind of looming in the shadows here, but what's the threat level at this point, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still long term. What's the nuclear clock that we have? It's still at 11:59 for the long term, but I think they've probably got 2 to 3 years of conference peace, and then what happens from there is almost anybody's guess, because I think there is certainly a possibility we get to super leagues. I think there's certainly possibilities that private equity or one of the big networks or Apple or Google or somebody decides we're starting our own league. I think there's too much money to be made by not finding ways to work together. You look at Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, and those guys are just so power hungry. They have so much power. Somebody has to. I'll put it this way. At FCA, the coaches convention this year, I was talking to some coaches afterwards, and they had a meeting with a consultant from the NFL who had come in. And he's like, the coach was telling me, the consultant was like, it's a lot harder to try to work with you guys, because in the NFL, if there's a plan that makes the NFL better, everybody falls in line.
Yeah.
It is 136 little fiefdoms in college football, and everybody's looking out for number one. And frankly, everybody would benefit by a rising tide that lifts all ships. But in fact, a number of very powerful somebodies have to be willing to cede some of that power to come up with a larger what is best for the sport landscape. And I just don't know if that happens. So my guess is we're going to get to a point where we have future expansion in the SEC and the Big Ten that will collapse the other big conferences. We'll see antitrust cases. We're going to spend a lot more time in court. I wouldn't doubt if any of that stuff happens. But I don't think we have to get into that route. I think there are off-ramps here. I just don't know that anybody is going to be willing to take the off-ramp if it means putting themselves at risk of losing even an ounce of the power that they already have.
Okay, a couple fun notes if the people will indulge me here with David. So I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that you spent 24 hours in a Buc-ees, and that was part of a bet that you had with our friend Andrea Adelson on from your show. I could not tell you how much I enjoyed that content. I was hooked. The hourly updates. How's David doing? I've never been in a Buc-ees. I want to drive somewhere where there's a Buc-ees just because of what you did. I have to experience this, and I will at some point.
Yeah, Buc-ees is lovely. I'm pro. I will tell you the insidious level of losing that bet that I think I didn't appreciate. I thought that the loss meant I was going to have to spend 24 hours at Buc-ees. No, that was the easy part. The part that has really will stick with me is that I'll never live it down now. I will never be David Hale, the guy who spent 20 years as a sports writer and this and that. I will be the guy who spent 24 hours in a Buc-ees. I will be talking about this till the day I die. It's truly devious what Andrea put me through.
Okay, so now you have another bet on the line here. So we've got skydiving, a stadium camp out. Is that 24 hours too?
I think it's just an overnight.
Just an overnight. Okay. Yeah. A Sheetz road trip, another gas station.
As a Wawa person, I'm against the Sheetz road trip, but yes.
Well, I've heard of Sheetz. Is this like a grocery store thing, or is
no?
This more...
it's like a
Buc-ees.
A Buc-ees, a 7-Eleven, but it was in that genre. Yeah, it's a lesser Wawa, is what I'm trying to say.
A lesser Wawa. Okay. And what's the mascot one you might have to do?
You have to don a full mascot outfit and go to freshman welcome day on some campus and spend the day welcoming freshmen to campus.
I mean, that's fun. That's not like some of these are supposed to be kind of punishment, right?
If we do it in like Tallahassee,
true, you'll be sweating
and you're sweating your balls off. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. My vote is absolutely for the stadium camp out. I know everybody's voting for skydiving because it's like, oh, I'm going to make you skydive. No, I want to see you spend the night in a stadium and look for ghosts and all sorts of fun things. So
I think telling ghost stories and making s'mores on the hill with Dabo overnight would be hilarious. Andrea is very concerned that she is going to die skydiving in pursuit of like a 30-second clip on ACC Network, which I'll grant you would be a sad way to go.
And final thing from me, David and I are a bit of music nerds. We like to share notes on that. I got my Replacements t-shirt on here. Favorite concert you went to this summer?
I saw Sturgill Simpson in Asheville, and it was exceptional. Sturgill puts on a hell of a show. I highly recommend. I'll give you a good little Replacements nugget, though. So I went to go see Tommy Stinson at the bar down the road from my house, the Thirsty Beaver, and we played pool together. It was just like there's probably 80 people there for the show, but he was just hanging out.
How great is that?
He had played there right after COVID. He had played at this like record store down the street from our house. And after that, I was supposed to go to that show, couldn't go. But after that show at the record store, he walks over to the Thirsty Beaver, which is like a block down, and sits on the bar with an acoustic guitar and played for an hour and a half there. And so he's like, this time I'm just going to eliminate the middleman and play the whole show there. But it was awesome. Got to chat with him. He told me a good like behind the scenes on why they were banned from SNL. He said, Tommy Stinson was with Guns N' Roses for years, including the Making of the Chinese Democracy album,
That's right.
which is the only one he's actually on. And I got to talk to him about my long-lasting question for him, which was who was more difficult to work with, Paul or Axel. He said Paul was actually much more difficult to work with than Axel. So anyway, very cool experience.
Oh my God, that's like a bucket list thing right there. That's an incredible thing. What a story right there. My answer is probably going to surprise you. Now, the best concert I went to was actually Dave Matthews. And I know some people don't look, you love or hate Dave Matthews. The show they played here in Syracuse, it was great. It was incredible. My favorite concert I went to, and I was never, ever going to expect to say this until I went and I did it, was The Offspring. The Offspring.
There's no way.
Yes, I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. I was blown away. Because, look, you got to go into The Offspring with a certain frame of mind, right? But they put on a show. It was fun. It was energetic. There were more songs I knew than I realized. They did a version of Gone Away that was kind of a slower piano version. And I'm telling you, man, it got dusty in that amphitheater when they were playing that. And I was just like, man, this was fun. And I went in there just like, because a buddy of mine dragged me there who was a fan. I'm like, yeah, whatever. A Tuesday night, I'll go to a concert. It was great. So it's nice when you get surprised by
I went to
some
see,
bands who have preconceived
Weezer
notions
a couple of years ago for almost the same reason. I got free tickets, and I was like, let's go see Weezer. I like a few Weezer songs. And I was like, wait, I like a lot of Weezer songs. Awesome.
Yes. Okay. So there you go, friends. Music Hour with David and Brent coming soon, but just a couple minutes on it there. Thank you, my friend. Great insight as always. And look, you'll be known for that 24 hours in a Buc-ees, but people should know you for that great column that you put out on Sundays. It really encapsulates everything that happens in a college football Saturday with a little humor mixed in. And for somebody like me who's busy covering Syracuse for a good chunk of the day, maybe can't see everything, or a fan that can't see everything, make sure you read David's column on that and go vote on what the punishment will have to be this year for Andrea and David. I go stadium camp out, but this is America, and you have your vote, and you can select what you want them to do.
We're going to gerrymander it so that it's camp out for you. That's what we'll do. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks again to David Hale, ESPN, for joining us here. Man, I am so jealous of that Tommy Stinson story. Are you kidding me that he got to experience that? Tommy, come to Syracuse. We would love to hang out with you. Great stories there, great perspective on college football. Great bar name, by the way, that David was talking about there. Thumbs up on that one. That is as creative as it gets. Tell you what, guys, we've got so much coming up here on the pod. It's Clemson week next week. My guy Eric McClain, I know, is scheduled to join us next week. We're looking at a couple other guests to hop on the pod with us here and get you ready for what should be a big game. No matter what happens in the Clemson-Georgia Tech game, Syracuse has to go on the road, Death Valley, and that gauntlet of a road schedule that they are playing. It started with Tennessee, which again technically was a neutral site game, but did Syracuse get right against Colgate, and can they compete with the big boys? Clemson, a lot of big boys, a lot of NFL talent, particularly on that defensive side of the ball. So we will preview that matchup. A couple other things we're working on for the pod upcoming. We're always happy to get your suggestions on what you want to hear on the pod, who you want to hear on the pod. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you great text message access to me directly to suggest those things. We love hearing your suggestions on guests, topics, things that you want covered here on Syracuse Sports. So being a Syracuse Sports Insider, membership has its privileges, my friends, including having your comments highlighted exclusively here on the pod and our Syracuse football postgame shows. We will certainly join you for that after Colgate Friday night, upcoming games against Clemson, Duke. After a game, you know where to be: YouTube, Facebook, X, Live, or subscribe to Syracuse Sports on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your pods, so you can watch and listen to our postgame shows whenever you want. Thanks for listening today, guys. You know we appreciate you coming by and hanging out here. Let's let Keira Shea take us out once again here. We love to feature your independent music and your original music here on Syracuse Sports. Get in touch. All the info is in the show notes on how you can do that, so we can feature your music on the pod. Keira Shea here, 6 foot deep, terrific songs. Going to hit you right in the feels, guys. And you have yourself a terrific weekend, and we'll be back soon on Syracuse Sports.
I'm 1 milestone away from you, missing all my life. And I made some mistakes, but hell, I'm turning out alright. And it's no thanks to you, it was all on him. He made the woman out of the kid. And yeah, I hate it when someone asks me where my mama is. I'd say, don't feel bad, it ain't too crazy. My mama died when I was a baby, and they believe it, 'cause it's easier than telling them that my mama ran off to be a kid. Left her own at home with a half a kiss, saying, don't you worry, darling, I'll be home soon. So I held on tight to my daddy's love. He said I'm not leaving till I'm in the mud, laying 6 feet deep in the nicest dirt around. So when someone asks me who raised me upright, I say my daddy every time. And I'm learning how to love. He set these standards I hold high. Because of him I found someone who knows just how to treat me right. A man who's funny, one who's kind, and I see true love in his eyes. And I can't help but think it's 'cause my daddy raised me right. 'Cause my mama ran off to be a kid, left her own at home with that half a kiss, saying, don't you worry, darling, I'll be home soon. So I held on tight to my daddy's love. He said I'm not leaving till I'm in the mud, laying 6 feet deep in the nicest dirt around. So when someone asks me who raised me upright, till the day he dies. I'll raise a glass in hopes that he can see that I did alright in this little life that was just him and me. Cause my mama ran off to be a kid, left her own at home with a half a kiss saying, don't you worry darling, I'll be home soon. So I held on tight to my daddy's love. He said I'm not leaving till I'm in the mud, laying 6 feet deep and the ice stirred around. So when someone asks me who raised me upright, I say my daddy every time. I say my daddy every time.